looking to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. In the sternest warning yet of the Biden administration to any attack by its proxies, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. would respond decisively to any attack. The U.S. has accused Iran of assisting a renewal of attacks on U.S. forces based in Iraq. Israel's ambassador to the UN called on Secretary General Antonio Guterres to resign after he gave a speech saying the Hamas attack on October 7, in which 1,400 people were killed, quote, did not happen in a vacuum. Earlier, Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman and Indonesia's President Joko Widodo called for an end to the escalating violence in the Gaza Strip. And President Marcos Jr. witnessed the signing of the 2024 to 2028 UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for the Philippines on the 78th anniversary of the founding of the UN. In the sternest warning yet of the Biden administration to any attack by its proxies, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. would respond decisively to any attack. The U.S. has accused Iran of assisting a renewal of attacks on U.S. forces based in Iraq.
We're all determined to prevent this conflict from spreading. A broader conflict would be devastating, not only for Palestinians and Israelis, but for people across the region and indeed around the world. To that end, we call on all member states to send a firm, united message to any state or non-state actor that is considering opening another front in this conflict against Israel, or who may target Israel's partners, including the United States. Don't throw fuel on the fire. Members of this council, and permanent members in particular, have a special responsibility to prevent this conflict from spreading. Now, it is no secret to anyone in this room or on this council that for years, Iran has supported Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and other groups that continue to carry out attacks on Israel. Iranian leaders have routinely threatened to wipe Israel off the map. In recent weeks, Iran's proxies have repeatedly attacked U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria, whose mission is to prevent ISIS from renewing its rampage. The United States does not seek conflict with Iran. We do not want this war to widen. But if Iran or its proxies attack U.S. personnel anywhere, make no mistake, we will defend our people, we will defend our security swiftly and decisively.
American and allied forces in Iraq and Syria have been targeted at least 13 times with drones and rockets over the past week, according to the Pentagon.
This accounts for everything, but between October 17th and the 24th, U.S. and coalition forces have been attacked at least 10 separate times in Iraq and 3 separate times in Syria via a mix of one-way attack drones and rockets.
He didn't identify the specific organizations responsible, but he said that the groups conducting these attacks are supported by the IRGC and the Iranian regime.
We know that the groups conducting these attacks are supported by the IRGC and the Iranian regime. What we are seeing is the prospect for more significant escalation against U.S. forces and personnel across the region in the very near term, coming from Iranian proxy forces and ultimately from Iran. So by virtue of our announcement over the weekend, we are preparing for this escalation both in terms of defending our forces and responding decisively. And I just want to emphasize the point that I made earlier, which is that we always reserve the right to defend ourselves, and we will never hesitate to take action when needed to protect our forces and our interests overseas.
Meanwhile, UN Chief Antonio Guterres called at the Security Council for an immediate ceasefire and alleged international law was being breached in Gaza. Gutierrez sparked fury from the Israeli delegation when he said the Hamas attacks did not happen in a vacuum and criticized Israel's suffocating occupation.
It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
Now, his remarks infuriated Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen, who, pointing his finger at Gutierrez and raising his voice, recounted graphic accounts of civilians, including young children, killed in the deadliest single attack in Israeli history.
Ofri, 10 years old. Avigail, 3 years old. Maya, 17 years old. Raz, 4 years old. Aviv, 2 years old. Ariel, 4 years old. Kfir, little Kfir, only 9 months. Yuval, 8 years old. Ofir, 17 years old. There are just a few of the many children and babies that have not seen evil. They have not caused evil, but they are victims of evil. Mr. Secretary General, in what world do you live? Definitely, this is not our world.
Israel's ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, called on Gutierrez to resign.
Hamas, as the minister explained, beheaded babies, burned families, raped women, abducted kids, babies, Holocaust survivors. And the SG is blaming the victim? You are blaming Israel? This is a pure blood libel. This is a pure blood libel, and I think that the Secretary General must resign. Because from now on, every day that he is here in this building, unless he apologizes immediately, today we called him to apologize, there's no justification to the existence of this building. This building was established to prevent atrocities. How can the Secretary General, with his words, justify in any way the terrible atrocities that happened to our civilians, innocent civilians?
A hostage released by Hamas shares her, quote, "I went through hell" ordeal. The softly spoken but determined 85-year-old Lifshit sat in a wheelchair at a Tel Aviv hospital as she told reporters how she had been thrown on a motorbike and beaten by Palestinian militants who stormed her kibbutz community near the Gaza border.
עברתי תופת שלא חשבנו ולא ידענו שנגיע למצב הזה. והם השתוללו אצלנו בקיבוץ, אותי חטפו, השכיבו אותי על אופנוע, על הצד, וטסו איתי בשדות החרושים לכיוון חיר בחזר. הם פוצצו את הגדר, שבנו גדר אלקטרונית מיוחדת, ב$2.5 מיליארד, והיא לא עזרה כלום. וההמונים הסתערו על הבתים שלנו, עיקו אנשים, חלק הם חטפו, כמוני חטפו. לא היה הבדל אם יחטפו קשישים או צעירים.
They took her into the Gaza Strip where Lifshit said she had to walk through an underground spider web of tunnels. At the location, she had been kept with alongside others. She said captives received medical attention and they were given the same bread, cream cheese, and cucumber meals as their friendly guards. The toilets were cleaned every day, Lifshit said, adding Hamas guards feared an outbreak of disease. She also described her captors as very friendly and very courteous. Meanwhile, the grandson of released hostage, Yocheved Lifshit, said the family are sending a lot of strength to their grandfather, still being held by Palestinian Hamas militants.
We've been waiting, we've been in the press, we tried to push as much as we can to do the most important thing is to release all the hostages. And we've just been lucky to get our grandma back. It's been amazing. We're sending a lot of strength, and we're doing our best to find you, and we're waiting to hug you as well.
With her and 79-year-old Nurit Cooper released on Monday night, Hamas has now freed a total of four of the hostages seized on October 7, estimated at more than 220. The U.S. has sought to delay Israel's plans for a ground invasion. According to reports, the U.S. wants to prioritize the release of hostages and the distribution of aid.
Again, it's Israel's decision as to when and how they conduct their operations. The relationship between the United States and Israel right now is focused on, again, understanding what their defense needs are and making sure that we're able to support them in that regard. But we're also communicating with them, as I highlighted earlier, in terms of providing those kinds of thoughtful questions and things to consider based on our lessons in urban combat. And then also emphasizing the importance of mitigating civilian casualties in light of the situation in Gaza. And so that continues to be our focus.
Israel launched its campaign in response to an unprecedented cross-border attack by Hamas militants on October 7. Gunmen from the Palestinian group poured into Israel from Gaza, killing more than 1,400 people and taking 222 hostages, according to Israeli authorities. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to eliminate Hamas and ensure it can no longer threaten Israeli civilians. Aid agencies report hospitals are overwhelmed, generators lack fuel, and shelters are heaving under the weight of an estimated 1.4 million displaced, more than half the population. Since the war began, a few dozen trucks with essential supplies have been allowed to cross the Egyptian border into Gaza, far fewer than necessary according to aid agencies. The Palestine Red Crescent said Tuesday it had received the fourth batch of humanitarian aid consisting of 8 trucks. The supplies have included medicines, food and water, but not fuel, which Israel fears could end up in Hamas's hands. On day 17 of the Gaza-Israel crisis, UN humanitarians pleaded for desperately needed fuel deliveries and other relief items to prevent the already dire situation in the enclave from worsening further. Here's the UN Health Agency WHO spokesman.
Almost more important than anything else is fuel. So far, fuel has not been allowed into the Strait. Fuel is extremely urgent because without fuel, the trucks themselves cannot move. Without fuel, the generators cannot produce electricity for hospitals, for bakeries, and for the water desalination plants.
Doctors have been performing surgeries without anesthesia or other basic surgical supplies, while fuel shortages are having disastrous results.
1/3 of hospitals now are non-functional, just at the time when the medical burden is enormous. Around 2/3 of clinics are non-functional. We keep getting asked, are we delivering to the biggest hospital in Gaza? That's Al-Shifa Hospital in the north, which already, as I said, has a bed occupancy rate of 150%. We've been asked if we've been able to deliver to the Turkish hospital, which is perhaps the biggest provider of cancer services in Gaza. The answer is no. The answer is no, because we do not have security guarantees to deliver that aid. We understand that there's only between 1 and 3 litres of clean water per person per day available to the displaced right now. Now, by international standards, we would expect, at the bare minimum, 15 litres per person per day.
To date, fuel has not been included in the 3 aid convoys allowed into Gaza from Egypt since last Saturday, totaling 54 trucks of humanitarian supplies. Earlier, Saudi Arabia's Mohammed bin Salman and Indonesian President Joko Widodo called for an end to the escalating violence in the Gaza Strip, which Israel has besieged and bombed for 13 days in response to a deadly cross-border attack by Hamas militants on October 7. The pair earlier spoke at a summit between Gulf and Southeast Asian leaders.
ويؤلمنا في الوقت الذي نجتمع فيه ما تشهده غزة اليوم من عنف متصاعد يدفع ثمنه المدنيون الأبرياء، وفي هذا الصدد نؤكد رفضنا القاطع لاستهداف المدنيين بأي شكل من الأشكال وتحت أي ذريعة، وأهمية التزام القانون الدولي الإنساني وضرورة وقف العمليات العسكرية ضد المدنيين والبنى التحتية التي تمس حياتهم اليومية، وتهيئة لظروف لعودة الاستقرار وتحقيق السلام الدائم الذي يكفي الوصول إلى حل عادل لإقامة دولة فلسطينية وفق حدود 67 بما يحقق الأمن والازدهار للجميع.
Terakhir, secara khusus saya ingin menyampaikan keprihatinan yang mendalam atas perkembangan situasi di Gaza. Tindakan kekerasan harus dihentikan, isu kemanusiaan harus menjadi prioritas saat ini, dan kita harus mencegah agar kondisi tidak semakin buruk. Kita tidak boleh lupa akar masalahnya adalah pendudukan wilayah Palestina oleh Israel. Ini yang harus diselesaikan sesuai dengan parameter internasional yang telah disepakati, di mana posisi ASEAN dan GCC harus jelas dan solid untuk mendukung solusi perdamaian yang adil dan langgeng di Palestina.
President Marcos has instructed government agencies to start preparing for the day when electric vehicles are manufactured in the Philippines.
The president also emphasized the need for preparing the economy for the eventual manufacture of electric vehicles in the country and linking these up with the local mining sector that will produce the minerals needed for the production of batteries and other components of electric vehicles.
Now, this is part of his plan to electrify the transport sector, particularly mass transport and light cargo vehicles, amid rising fuel prices.
The government agencies to work on is the continued electrification of the transport sector, particularly mass transport and light cargo vehicles. So the president gave emphasis on the need, one, for having the charging stations in place. Second, to make sure that the benefits to the transport sector, is particularly the drivers, will indeed be there, because right now, just from a fuel standpoint, the estimated difference between electric vehicles running per kilometer and those that are internal combustion engines using gas and diesel is quite significant.
Last week, the president said that it's only sensible to encourage the shift to electric vehicles given the volatility of oil products in the world market. He also cited the promotion of the use of electric vehicles as one of the measures of the government to uphold the Philippines' commitment under the Paris Agreement, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 75% from 2020 to 2030.
So for those using gasoline, the per kilometer run is at 5 pesos 30 centavos. But for the light duty electric vehicles, it's a range of 1 peso to 26 centavos to 1 peso to and 90 centavos per kilometer. Whereas the cost for those running on diesel is at 4 pesos per kilometer. Of course, these are based on assumptions of the cost of gasoline at 70 per liter and the cost of diesel at 66 pesos per liter.
ASEAN Secretary General Dr. Kao Kim Horn met with Japanese Foreign Minister Kamikawa Yoko in Tokyo to discuss ASEAN-Japan relations and key regional issues. Now, they agreed to work closely to promote the ASEAN-Japan Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which was established this year to mark the 50th anniversary of ASEAN-Japan relations. Dr. Kao also assured Foreign Minister Kamikawa of ASEAN support in preparing for the ASEAN-Japan Commemorative Summit, which will be held in Tokyo in December 2023. President Marcos Jr. witnessed the signing of the 2024 to 2028 UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for the Philippines on the 78th anniversary of the founding of the UN. The SDCF sets out the areas of cooperation between the Philippines and the UN and provides strategic direction for UN activities at the country level. It's one of the first frameworks to be signed under the reformed UN development system. The new document builds on the dynamism of the Philippine economy and refocuses on UN support to advance the national agenda for innovation-driven, climate-smart, resilient, and inclusive economic growth. It's aligned with Philippine government policies and priorities and subject to joint monitoring. President Marcos expressed optimism that the SDCF can be a catalyst for the accomplishment of our shared goals in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
We look forward to vigorous engagements on key issues that bear on the future of our communities, including food security, health, education, climate action, decent work, digital transformation, and disaster risk reduction. The UN SDCF brings with it not only the legacies of the Philippines' constructive and long-standing engagement with the United Nations. It also signifies our role in shaping more inclusive and effective multilateral institutions that embrace and bring tangible results to us all.
And finally, in our news, here's a showbiz update from our correspondent, MJ Racadio.
Miss Universe just around the corner. Reigning Miss Universe Arbany Gabriel flew in Los Angeles, California, advocating for human trafficking, organized by the U.S. Department of Labor. Take a look.
I found this as a way to use my skills to help women in my hometown of Houston, Texas. And I was doing this all the way until I went and competed at Miss Universe and then moved to New York. But I built a relationship with these women. It went well beyond just the sewing classes and teaching a new skill. These women taught me so much. Their strength, their tenacity really showed me that community and support is so important. Sometimes we may be in situations that force us to believe we can only be so much, or people tell us that we're not good enough or worthy of achieving so much more. And that can be kind of a detrimental state to be in. I remember the last woman that I mentored before going on to compete at Miss Universe, I taught her sewing classes, but she came from a life of human trafficking, and I was there to offer her a pathway to something else. And some days she would come in and we would strictly just do sewing classes. Other days she would come in and tell me that she didn't feel that she was worthy of another life. She felt like she should go back to her old life, and that was her only option. And I learned from her that you need to tell people and make them realize their potential. Sometimes we all need that voice telling us that we are so much more than we realize. This woman was so smart. She had been through so much, stronger than anyone I had ever met, but she was believing a false narrative about herself, that she wasn't good enough or that she couldn't achieve anything else. She caught on to the sewing classes quickly, and I was there telling her every single time that she is so intelligent, that she has been through so much, and that she doesn't have to go back to her old life, and I will always be there for her. Just like I felt like I inspired her, she inspired me. And There's so much power in having programs that are hands-on, like that program back in Houston, like APAT, and so many other organizations. So I'm very honored to be standing here today, and we must continue to be that support system for others. You know, continue to fight against human trafficking and domestic violence in the most vulnerable communities. Because I've learned that when we're blessed, our blessings are meant to be shared. We must always be an open ear for someone, and there's days we all need someone, and that's okay. So I stand here today to continue to advocate and fight for human trafficking. Thank you so much for having me here. And may we continue to always realize and remind each other that we are worthy of our personal goals and our personal dreams. Thank you.
Yes. Well, you have like almost a month away.
Less than a month. I'm sad. It's coming to an end. It's fast approaching. Time went by so fast, but it's been such a blessed year.
So what can you say to the Filipino American community?
Well, Filipino American community, I love you. Thank you for all the love and support. I hope that I made you proud this year as a first generation Filipino American. I raised my flag whenever I could, and I proudly represent our community and our culture. And even after Miss Universe, I will continue doing the same.
Mabuhay. Have you ever thought about you look like a Megan Fox?
You know, people tell me that every now and then. I don't see it, but you know, I would gladly accept that.
Mabuhay.
Mabuhay. Salamat po.
That is it for entertainment news. I'm Jay Riccati here. Tune in to Net 25 because we live in extraordinary times.
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.